Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, I hope that you're having a wonderful day and you are ready for the show. So today on the program, as is tradition, the last Friday of every month is dedicated to our friends over at Popzara, and more specifically, Mr. Nathan Evans. He's a longtime correspondent with the show, helps us out with a lot of events, and is otherwise just an all-around fun guy and nice guy to get to know, to talk to, and of course catch up on current events. I think that's really at the heart of what it is that we talk about here on Computer America with the crew over at Popzara, and that is, well, current events. And that can span anything from recent releases, movies, controversies, but of course we always try to err on the side of, well, technology. And it's a lot more relaxed, but I think on a Friday, that is really what you want. Something to wind down, and, we don't need to scream at you about everything that's going wrong or bad. We need to scream at you just because we want to. That is our job. So everyone, before we get started, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including today's show notes. You'll find past shows, future shows, and more, all at the website. You'll also find some op-eds, some editorials, some reviews. We have a couple of new products that we need to, of course, talk about, or I should say a couple products that I need to actually do work on and write reviews and all that good stuff and more. So if you want to find that, and by the way, something that I'm really proud of lately is that I'm able to go back to some of our previous reviews, because a lot of the products that get sent to us, we're able to use them for the duration, use them over a period of time. We find someone that we know pretty closely, and if anything happens, we get their input, and it's not just the split second, 5-minute review. We try our best to go back and update reviews whenever possible, because, your first impressions are one thing, and those are definitely valid in what you really want to hear about. But also, hey, what happens? What happens to those headphones a year after use? Do they start to wear? Do they start to chip? Things like that. So the point is, computeramerica.com reviews. Okay, so all that being said, let's go ahead, bring on our guest, and just get today's conversation going. Always a fun time, and of course, managing editor over at Popzara, be that Popzara Publications, magazine, or whatever you would like to call them. They're always a lot of fun, and you should go check out their website for reviews and more, reviews, articles, and more. Nathan, how you doing? Welcome on to Computer America.
This should be the last day of the month, but it's a leap year. So we got an extra day.
I completely forgot.
Yeah. So if your birthday's on leap year, you should be like what? You'd be like 5 years old? 6?
Yeah. Well,
6.5.
And have you ever met anyone that actually has that particular issue? Because it seems like a rarity.
They don't exist. They're like Bigfoot.
Yeah. Oh, so you're saying if you catch one, they're like leprechauns. You get something for it.
Bigfoot is like the original Pokemon. It's like he's the hidden one. But I've never met anybody with those weird birthdays. I've met many people with my birthday. but I've met no one with that birthday. It's a little crazy.
Yeah, I think I had one classmate, and they got teased for it, of course, in school because kids are so mean. But I think
Was
the
that you?
consensus,
Was it you that was mean?
absolutely. But I think the consensus is that everyone just, I think they just celebrate, April 1st as their birthday. So.
I assume so.
Well, there you go. So, with that being said, hey, glad to hear from you. It's been a little while, although we have been in touch, and of course, we did a special podcast with you as kind of like a post CES kind of deal. But it's been a little while. How you been?
It's lucky we did CES when we did, because I got to tell you something. Trade shows are endangered. I don't know if you want to jump into that first, but
Yeah, we
man,
can.
I've never seen such a thing that
Yeah,
everyone's so scared.
I think just today I saw that, and of course, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. I think that the Geneva Motor Show or whatever it's called got canceled. Microsoft pulled out of the Game Developers Conference, and I think they canceled the Mobile World Conference out in Barcelona this year.
It's a lot. It's normally these things happen. Like there's even talk of the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo being canceled.
Really,
I,
that
I
would be massive.
Well, yesterday, Prime Minister Abe over in Japan, he shut down all Tokyo schools for the entire month of March because
Hmm.
of this. Yeah, it's a little nutty. Like we have to understand, like we're talking about Asian countries,
Mm-hmm.
and the coronavirus. What's the official name of coronavirus?
COVID-19.
Yes, that's it. Exactly what you said. COVID. I wish they'd called it something more, more addressable, more hashtaggy, like Wuhan flu.
or Black Plague 2, Electric Boogaloo.
But they made this consensus where they weren't going to name it after a specific place because they didn't want to ostracize.
Yeah.
But let's be fair here. It coronavirus. It sounds like a beer.
Uh, yeah, it's of course I've actually heard a few different iterations of it. I think it depends on just where you get your coverage from. Here in the United States, I think coronavirus is kind of the number one. COVID-19 is the other one, and there's a couple of names, but whatever name it
Exactly.
goes by, it's having some pretty big implications. Even though I don't. It's hard to get a consensus as to how serious this is going to be. Yeah.
Let me tell you what this is about. Okay, we can go back to the technical side of this in a second. But for your listeners, as someone who's been following, me. I'm not one to hold my tongue on certain matters. My speciality is ripping the curtain from the Wizard of Oz and saying what's really going on, which I'll get into on the tech side. I'm not a tinfoil hat. I'm not, but I understand how opportunities come. And the old adage is never let a good crisis go to waste. Here's the thing. The reason everybody's going nutty about this now, this thing's been out for a couple months, but we're going nutty for it now because there's an election coming up in this country. It's been politicized. It's been politicized in a way that can be used for anything. It is the universal tool. You can, if you like Trump, it's pro-Trump. If you hate Trump, it's anti-Trump. What's trending on Twitter?
What's that?
Trump virus. Trump virus is tweeting. They're trying to hold Trump accountable for the coronavirus. So
that does seem weird. I mean,
it's completely expected because it's been weaponized. And
and really, just to get to the facts of it, it was caused by, of course, unsanitary conditions and exotic animal trade in China. It spread to a couple of places.
Bats.
Bats. I just saw this yesterday on the news. They were like 90% sure it was bats of all things.
Well, no tinfoil hat, but there have been allegations, and there have been allegations from actually noteworthy publications that there's and again, the tinfoil hat person would say, "Oh, of course," but it seems to fit the mold of a biological entity that maybe this thing was tinkered with genomically, using some sort of CRISPR device or whatever they use, because it doesn't seem to follow the natural thing. You remember back in the 1700s, before we knew what sex was? Yeah, I remember the 1700s. Chip. No, democracy never going to work. But they used to call it spontaneous generation. That if you put a bunch of rice and barley and you put a sack over it and wait 3 days, it would make mice. It would create mice. They actually thought this. that the
I recall
idea
that. Yeah.
that the idea there's two theories here. The idea that these viruses that were dormant in monkeys or dormant in baboons or dormant there, and they're just waiting for humans to stumble upon them and somehow anthropomorphically, I forget the word. What's the word? Zoo. There's a word when you can transfer an animal disease to a person.
Yeah. I do not know that word.
I apologize, all you New York Times crossword people, for not knowing every fiddly word. But the fact is, that's the same exact
Zoonosis.
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 It has something to do with zoo. And by the way, it is not zoophilia. Do not look that word up. Do not.
Zoonosis. There you go.
So, but anyway, this is the exact same spread that they claimed AIDS came out of, that it was dormant in monkeys, that it was there, and that it suddenly just massively transferred to humans. And of course, you had the tinfoil hat people saying it was a biologically engineered weapon, probably by the Russians and all this stuff. But with this particular coronavirus, there seems to be a little more, I don't want to say evidence, but a lot more speculation that maybe this thing may have come out of a lab, that maybe it was being studied, that it was looking, there are people who are saying it has elements of HIV in it, that HIV medications are being used to combat it. I don't know. All I know is it's here. It seems to mostly affect Asians, although I did hear a report that some high prominent person in Iran died.
Oh yeah. There was. I think it was the defense minister, and they had him sitting next to the prime minister of Iran, and he and like the next day he died. So obviously the leader of the country could have been exposed.
Now they're saying the Pope may have it because the Pope got exposed. Because this new Pope, is it Benedict? No,
I
not
think so.
Benedict.
No,
Francis.
Francis. That's it.
He loves hanging out with poor, ugly people. I mean, poor, dirty people. He's kissing their
As he
feet.
should. That is very Pope-like. Good for him.
He's an interesting Pope, but he loves hanging out with dirty, like smelly, let's just be honest, sick people. And next thing you know, he's coughing and hacking. So, I hope I don't know who I pray to that the Pope doesn't get it. Can I pray to the Pope? But
sure.
But anyway, going back to this whole thing though, politics, okay? And you could apply this to anything. And when it comes to canceling shows, I remember we heard this like 2 weeks ago where Sony was pulling out of PAX, certain companies were pulling out of these things. And I said it then, there's no coronavirus in Boston. There's a lot of viruses in Boston, trust me. This is not one of them. But I'll say that, by the way, do not hit the harbor around St. Patrick's Day.
I think that a lot of these conventions that are being canceled, like the Geneva Motor Show, that's being canceled because the government, even though there's only one or like 10 like just a handful, I think in hoping to curtail this thing, they have banned all gatherings of over 1,000 people, and that could be concerts, that could be obviously conventions. So I know here in the United States we've had a couple of identified cases, and of course when a trade show like that happens, a lot of people fly in from a lot of places. They're doing it, as I said, out of an abundance of caution in all of these. So
when we got back from CES, I actually got sick.
Me too.
I
Horribly.
actually got pretty. Yeah, I think we probably caught it. We were in breathing distance of each other, but I got pretty sick, and I'm not.
We
gonna
were
lie
in
to
the
you.
same Denny's. Oh my God, it could have been it.
We shared the same food. We were in the same Denny's. If I'm going to get sick and die, I do not want it to be from Denny's. But no,
yeah.
we shared the same space. It was a lot of fun. But I got so sick, and I'm going to be honest with you, there was part of me, because I was having breathing problems, my chest was hurting. I had a lot of the symptoms of the flu. And there are a lot of Chinese people at CES.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you something. For the back of my mind, I thought about it. I get sick for like 10 days.
Me too. And honestly, I didn't think much of it. And then there was like one report, like one rogue report. This is not the consensus, that someone in the CDC or someone in the high level of the World Health Organization, they're quarantining people for 14 days, because I guess 14 days you start to show the symptoms. And then one rogue report said it could be as much as 24 days before you actually see all the symptoms in everyone. And I was like, I'm not, like, from CES to the time I got sick, it was not 14, it was over 14 days. But it was within 24. I was like, I'm gonna die.
Here's the thing. It's Ebola all over again, except for Ebola was largely contained to African countries, and this is largely contained to China. And China's response has been, I'll just say, kind of fun to watch, because have you seen the videos of them spraying people coming off planes, going around the city with these tank machines, spraying the city, going into buildings and spraying things.
They are coating everything, yeah.
It's kind of funny a little bit. It's not an overreaction, but people who've never been to China or haven't been to a Chinatown or haven't been around a Chinese family on Thanksgiving or Chinese New Year need to understand that these are very gregarious people. And I got to tell you something. When you look at the number of cases of coronavirus that have affected people versus the number of mortalities and fatalities, it's very, very low. And this is what I want to stress. It almost exclusively kills people that are old or sick. If you tend to be younger or healthier, you're probably going to get sick and recover. And these things should spread. I remember the SARS spreading. That's what started all this face mask stuff.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this, you see people getting on planes, you hear people contact, and the number of actual infections and transference from person to person has been shockingly low. It's been really, really, really low. This thing's got nothing on the traditional flu, which kills tens of thousands every year in this country. In the United States, 30,000 people die of the flu.
And and at the same time, I think that's the reason they're doing this is because at least we have a flu vaccine. We have things that you can take or like a yearly vaccine that kind of either lessens the symptoms or stops the transmission altogether. Admittedly, the flu still goes everywhere. It's just that it's just that it's new, it's different. This is something that we haven't seen before, and it's very infectious. So even though it may not be it's not turning people into zombies. It's not a mortality rate of SARS had 10%. I'm reading here MERS had a death toll of about 34% of people who caught it. 2% is still decently kind of serious. That's 1 out of 50 people. That's bad.
Well, the mortality rate's less than Ebola was, and the reason I think people are so phlegemic about it, and I say that it's the reason they're so crazy about this one as they were, it's because China's developed country in a way that the African countries are not. And the United States economy and so much of the world's economy relies on China for manufacturing. They rely on China for all of this stuff. And this has put a kibosh on a lot of that. And we've seen the videos of people who have this. It doesn't look pleasant. Have you seen? It looks like a zombie movie. You get people rattling. It's horrible. It's unpleasant to watch. You see bodies flailing on tables. You see women in the hospitals choking into machines. You never had that with Ebola. You never have that. And it's graphic. And picture's worth 1,000 words. A video's worth 1,000,000. This is very, very different. But going back to the trade shows being canceled, the big one, again, it depends on their community. Auto shows, trade shows, the game developers conference, which was supposed to happen in 2 weeks. Yeah. Everybody's pulled out of that. Yeah. You should just cancel it.
There was another one about construction, and they show all the new construction technology out there. That one was canceled as well. So a lot of different sectors.
No offense. If there's any one group of people that's going to be immune to this thing, it's going to be construction people. They breathe in so much garbage. Their lungs are probably granite. But, you never hear about, like, they get everything else. They get mesothelioma. They get respiratory things. But you never hear them get the flu. But going back to it, though, no. Part of it is, well, here's the thing. Part of it also is the fact that there's a distaste for these trade shows. There's a growing distaste for these things where companies are finding it more and more prohibitive to go and have the expense and set up this to get this when they could easily live stream it. I mean, this has been the trend for a long time. A lot of the companies that have been pulling out of these shows are the same companies that are always pulling out of things at the drop of a hat. It's like, imagine you're married and you got to go meet your mother-in-law and you don't like each other. And all of a sudden, the phone calls. Any other day, the phone calls, it's work. I don't want to take it. I go, but when you're in the car to see your mother-in-law, the phone rings. Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I'm so sorry. I wish I could go.
The lesser of two evils.
Exactly. And so, forgive me, but it's a lifeline for these companies. Like specifically in the video game world, where companies don't have anything, and it's become, like I said, cost prohibitive to go and to do this type of expense, cause delays because they have earnings reports they have to do. look what happened to the stock market. That's the single biggest victim of this thing.
I don't
The
want to
stock
look at it. It's awful.
No. First of all, the stock market is not some fixed thing. It is humans getting crazy. When you see the news stories, and by the way, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying all of them, but in the United States, a vast majority of the negative news about the coronavirus can be specifically traced back to political engineering because it's almost designed to coincide with political campaigns. You get this, stock market drops like a rock over these fears because people overreact. You can actually do a Google search. Do it right now if you need to. Go do a Google search, look up mentions of the coronavirus the way it is inside the United States news stories. You will see that thing level and then spike in the last few days. What caused it? What caused that spike? And I can point to you what caused it. It is some sort of coordinated campaign within political spheres to generate a campaign of which to coincide with early voting. Don't forget,
and I have seen stories about it being turned political. I've also seen stories that, and actually, for in the chat room, just kind of mentioned this, that there are reports that stores are being stripped bare as people kind of hoard supplies and get ready for the coming pandemic. Which I think the World Health Organization did just say today that it was going to be a global pandemic or something like that. But at the same time, it's not just political and it's not just kind of commentary. I think that it's suffering from the same kind of infamy that the rainforest burning did. And maybe some kind of turmoil in other developing countries and things like that. It really does seem like an eye-catching. Everyone wants to know as much information about it, but it doesn't feel like it's going to stick around because it's the story of the day and it's really making the rounds.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it fits the criteria of what you'd call a pandemic, but for some reason hasn't been labeled one. I mean, it fits the criteria, which is either one country itself or like a verifiable number of countries. China itself has been gripped. They're canceling schools. This is a pandemic. The problem is, and this is the truth, society has gotten to the point where we've become pretty safe. Like we're never going to have another Black Plague wipe out 20 million people. I mean, we may laugh at China spray its people like they're like an outside fumigation, but they're taking actions. I don't know how good it is, but they are taking actions. And by the way, can I just say one last thing? And I don't mean to be political in like a left-right Democrat Republican sort of way, but sometimes it's hard to divest the two. And I'm going to tell you, you know why this spike is happening now this week?
Spike as in spike down in the economy or spike in mentions of the coronavirus? Which spike are we talking about?
Those are one and the same.
Okay.
Like they coincide. You could overlap the Venn diagram between the spike and the coronavirus coverage.
It has picked up speed. So what do you attribute it to?
Well, next Tuesday, March 3rd, it's called Super Tuesday. Super Tuesday is the second biggest voting day of the year in the United States. This will determine, well, not the outcome, but it will determine the perimeters of the 2020 presidential election. Like these things have value. And when these things generate, again, stock market, hashtag trending terms, colossal this coverage, like I said, it doesn't take a genius to see this is sort of an amateur attempt to like sow chaos in this sort of thing. Anybody who ever studies like the control of crowds, like if you've ever read Le Bon's like The Crowd, if you've ever read anything about theory, it's not The Simpsons. It's not, somebody think of the children. It's not South Park where people go derp, derp, derp. The fact is it's really easy to get people riled up, but it's much harder to empower them. And again, going back to trade shows, does anybody really suffer if GDC doesn't go along or if PAX doesn't happen?
So I was actually thinking about this earlier, about this whole trade show thing, and I said one of two things are going to happen because of this. And I'm sure that, what you've outlined, I think you're more for the second. So the first thing I think that can happen is that they're going to cancel it. The industry is going to, kind of not go. They're not going to talk this year because a lot of, kind of industry conversations happen. People get to meet each other, compare
Yep.
ideas, and so on and so forth. And next year they're going to go, man, we really missed that. It was really great to go out to, let's say, the Geneva Motor Show and kind of talk shop, and we really need to make our presence known this year. That's case number one. It's going to reaffirm that trade shows still have a purpose. The second one, and this, and maybe, and actually, kind of trade shows, because the motor show, the game developers conference, it's not like a PAX or anything like that. It's a developers conference, and then even like the Facebook 8, the F8, it's not really for fans. It's for industry personnel.
Hmm.
It's either going to reaffirm that they still like and need this, or number two, it's they're going to cancel it, and they're going to look back and they're going to go, we pushed out our stories, we did press releases, everyone picked up our news stories for free, we didn't have to pay anything, and boy, what a great success that was, not going to these trade shows. And it's going to either again affirm, or it's going to say, these trade shows have kind of outlived their purpose in the age of the internet.
They've outlived their purpose in regards to media presentation, but let me take the listeners back to mid 1980s. I don't know the date. Uh, there's some speculation. What I'm going to tell you is a little overblown, but I tend to believe most of it. And that is one of the greatest marketing tricks and swapperoos in the history of commerce, and that would be Coca-Cola. Are you familiar with the story of New Coke?
As I take a sip of Diet Coke, please tell me.
Don't drink that; it's poison.
Oh, absolutely.
No,
I will get brain cancer tomorrow, but that's not the point. So
no,
please,
but so
well,
so
and
so basically, okay,
okay.
cane sugar was the main ingredient in Coca-Cola for a long time.
Ever
And
since they
next
took
to,
out the cocaine, sad
I was
days.
going to say, yeah, you got to get your fix somewhere else. A little
Yeah.
buzz. But anyway, we all know that high fructose corn syrup became a derivative of cane sugar, and it's one of many processed derivations of sugar.
Right.
It doesn't taste as good as cane sugar. So to save money, Coca-Cola needed to change the recipe. Here's the problem, though. If you ever had Coca-Cola cane sugar and Coca-Cola high fructose, the cane sugar tastes 100 times better. It's sweeter. It tastes better in ways it's hard to describe.
I think that's why people rave over like Mexican Coke and
Yes.
Mexican Coca-Cola and Mexican beverages, is that they use
Well,
cane sugar and
I
not.
have a funny story about that. I have a really funny story. So, but anyway, if they changed the cane sugar to fructose corn syrup, there would be a noticeable change, which could result in the loss of billions. So, as the legend goes, what Coke did in order to manufacture this change, they created the worst drink they could: New Coke. New Coke was going to be the new Coke to replace old Coke. It was going to be great. It had cane sugar. It was fantastic. It was going to be the next big thing. Nobody liked it. Garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
Coca-Cola
remember.
said, "Oh, we listen to our fans. We're bringing Coke back. We're going to call it Coca-Cola Classic." But when they brought it back, the recipe had changed. Went from cane sugar to high fructose. But it was so close that people were just grateful that it was close enough. And
Yeah.
to this day, I don't even think Coca-Cola Classic exists, but the Coca-Cola formula. And the last 5 or 6, maybe even 10 years, there's also been a renaissance of bringing back cane sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You now have throwbacks. You have, like you said, Mexican. Back in the 90s, they used to sell a version of Coca-Cola that was kosher
Yeah.
because, again, Jews could not drink high fructose corn syrup because not a lot of rabbis blessing high fructose corn sugar vats. So when I was in California, we used to have kosher Coke, and it was fantastic. It was hard to
Mm-hmm.
get, but it's a little easier to get in Beverly Hills, let's just say, than it is in the middle of the country.
There are more stringent health concerns when it comes to sticking to kosher, and I know that yeah, they actually do have rabbis on the production floor
Hmm.
blessing the stuff as it kind of goes, and they make sure that no two ingredients kind of contaminate one another. It's really like kosher can almost be thought of not as like a religious kind of tenement, but more like it's just
Quality.
up to a higher standard.
You know what's funny? There are a few things in life that are as blissful than having a nice pastrami sandwich with kosher Coke in Beverly Hills. And it's expensive, but it's worth it. But
All
I'll
right.
say this.
Yeah.
But I'll say this. So the big snafu is, like you talked about, the trade shows. Let's cancel the trade shows, and then we'll remember how much we like them and justify them.
I
But
said
it
that was a
also,
potential. That was a
yes,
potential.
but it also has the effect of separating the wheat from the chaff. There's too many trade shows. And what the idea of a trade show is has changed dramatically. I'm no fan of E3, and E3 has undergone some catastrophic changes the last year that have finally put the nail in it for me as an editor.
Mhm.
Whereas there's been massive press leaks with journalists, the way they treat the journalists, and now they've openly embraced that they're just going to sell tickets like a PAX. It is no longer an industry trade show.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, the value proposition has disappeared. You know who else thinks so? Nintendo. They do not present. Sony, they pulled out too. Microsoft, I don't even think Microsoft does it anymore. They all do their own streaming shows.
Nintendo Direct, Sony has something, and Microsoft, of course, has their own event. Yeah.
Yeah, it's no longer it's no longer necessary because the press has become influencers. No offense, you probably influence more people. I know you influence me. No, than watching a trade show. Like, if you ever watched one of these things, they are like pulling teeth. The only one who ever has any fun is Nintendo because they don't care what you think. They have Miyamoto coming out with a bow tie. But when you have these fake CEOs and these VP marketing people come out, and you can clearly tell they don't know how to dress themselves, ill-fitting clothes. Everybody's wearing
No
leather
bow ties.
jackets. They're all wearing leather jackets. You know what? It doesn't look cool. You're not Neo from the Matrix. Stop that.
Well, I think they want to get on stage and they want to be like, "Hey, kids," and then, but at the same time, you know,
it's a Steve Buscemi gif, like, "Hello, fellow kids."
Yeah, exactly.
It's embarrassing, and it's garbage.
The tradition, I think, is the jacket. You know, kind of the jacket of the suit, but then underneath you have a T-shirt. That is Silicon Valley gold right there.
Like I said, the only one who ever has fun is Nintendo. The only other CEO that actually has a lot of fun in the tech sector is Lemire from T-Mobile. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
The guy who runs T-Mobile, Lemire, what's his name?
He kind of has that kind of long hair.
He's crazy. He's nuts.
T-Mobile
CEO. He's famous. Look him up. You get him on your stream.
Yeah. I said, you know, kind of longer hair. John Laguerre.
Yeah, rough face. I'll just say that, rough face.
He's a handsome man. John, please sponsor Computer America. But yeah.
Saying a man is handsome is like saying a large woman has a good personality. We all know what you mean. But see, this guy, he's all over Twitter. He's nuts. He shows up in chef hats. He's always trash talking. He's fun. He's doing something different. He looks like a stand-up comedian who did way too much coke and somehow lived. He's a lot of fun though. He's entertaining. So, and you don't see that with a lot of tech people. They got an image problem. They're hard. There's that one guy. Is it from NVIDIA? The Asian man who always wears that leather jacket. Like the top looks like a salary man, but the bottom looks like middle-age crisis.
I have no idea who you're talking about at this point. And I feel like at this point we have deviated so far from the conversation of this. And actually, I did want to squeeze in one more thing about the conferences here. Sure. Facebook F8. I have no idea what even the Facebook F8 even is. But I guess even really, I think even Facebook is saying, "Oh, good. We don't even know what this thing is. We get to cancel it."
They also show a lot of Oculus there. And again, Oculus being part of the gaming industry, Oculus being a failure, by the way. It exonerates them from having to explain and basically show they don't have nothing. If Sony shows up at GDC, nobody gives a crap about the games. They want to know how much is the PlayStation 5. They don't have an answer. They're going to ask Microsoft, "Hey, how much is the new Xbox?" They're not going to answer because that's the interesting thing, and they don't have an answer for it. They want to release this information on their own time, not at a conference. You don't need a conference for that anymore.
Yeah, and really, a virus just seems to be a way that a lot of people who didn't want to go. It's a very good reason to cancel it.
You and I both forgot. Shame on you, Ben. Shame on me. Really, the progenitor of all this was not Nintendo. It was Apple.
Of course.
They basically defined this control freak methodology of having the Steve Jobs walk across the stage in his really way too tight jeans and that turtleneck sweater. But that became the template. You see that template. Everybody does the template. They all think they're Steve Jobs.
And everyone does the one more thing, absolutely. And I apologize for that in the background. But so
they're coming for you. Yeah, they're coming for you, Barbara.
I apologize. That's yeah, we're having some work done here, and man, I didn't know they were doing this.
What are they working on? The walls or the floors?
The floors, unfortunately, the floors above me. It's even
That's.
great.
I
So
was going to say that sounds like floors. So
yeah, there you go. So
that's fine.
go
People
ahead
listen to
and talk
podcasts.
real quick.
They're used to dogs. They're used to dogs. You're fine.
So let's go ahead and talk about real quick. So Facebook F8, what were they expecting, or what were they not expecting?
I'll be honest with you. You couldn't pay me to be interested in Facebook. Facebook's going through a lot of problems right now for the exact same reason I described: politics. And they've gotten themselves embroiled in this whole thing where they're refusing, and I'll give to their credit, they're refusing to play arbiter of who is and who isn't real, as it should be. I can't stand it when companies like Twitter get holier than thou. I just saw DoorDash this morning uh, doing their BS on Twitter about taking sides. Here's the thing: you want my money, fine. Don't alienate people, even if I agree with you. That's even worse. When you agree with a cause and the company you like is still preachy. Look, my favorite rock band is U2. I love U2, but Bono, come on, man. Lay it off sometimes. I don't need to hear it all the time. I know you're God. I will pray to you. I will offer my firstborn son, but I don't need to hear you preach all the time. Nobody likes that.
I see where you're coming from, and Facebook, I think, is one of those companies that they have a very entrenched product, and then they're kind of coming out with everything else, and they think that because their product is so ubiquitous that everything else that they do, everyone should really pay attention to. Although the Facebook portal, a lot of their other services that they purchased, they didn't even make things like, I don't want to say WeChat, the other one. What's the chat service that Facebook owns? I am drawing a blank.
Messenger.
Messenger. Well, no, not Messenger. The other one. It's like kind of green. It's not Line.
If there's more than one, that's too many. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Well, Google's got like 7 of them. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Facebook does something that none of the other social media does. Oh, Instagram. They have Instagram.
No. WhatsApp. That's what it is. Oh
WhatsApp.
My goodness.
See, there's so many. See, they buy everything. But here's the thing. Facebook does something that Twitter doesn't do. It does something that most of Google products don't do. It does something that Gab doesn't do. And you know what that is? It makes money. It's profitable. And they do this by not interfering. They are providing a platform. I'm not defending Facebook. They still ban people, but they are less obvious about it the way Twitter is. Twitter might be the most rancidly, horribly run company I have ever seen.
You sound like every investor I've ever heard.
It's a garbage platform. It's garbage because the problem is when you start putting your thumb on the scale, right? Then what happens is you cannot create balance with imbalance. You're creating exemptions. Like it's an outlier. The problem is that you can't give people a platform and say freedom of speech or please talk what you want, and then punish them for doing exactly that because they're not doing your speech. That's a problem. But that's a different problem. That's a moral quandary. It's not necessarily like for example, I sent you a story which we don't need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I sent you a story about YouTube versus Dennis Prager and Prager University.
Yeah,
I'm not a big Dennis Prager fan. I understand what he's doing. He tried to sue YouTube, and I was actually against the lawsuit. I don't feel a private citizen should compel a private forum to say what they want. I think the way Prager went about it was bad. However, so the courts found for YouTube that they can censor.
We talked about this, I think, yesterday or it was Wednesday on the program, and we covered just a little bit. And he had a couple, and like my takeaway after going through this article was my initial reaction was he doesn't have a case by any means. And then I was reading some of his arguments talking about how how he was trying to tie it into, kind of what they promised, and then how they took it back, and that kind of thing, and false advertising, blah blah blah. And I thought, wow, he's doing he had
a point. He had a point.
He's definitely doing some legal mumbo jumbo that I'm like, that's interesting. But then you kind of read the judge's opinion, and you're like, nah, he didn't have a case, but he tried. He tried very hard.
Here's the thing though. YouTube wants people. They will gather people. They will actively hunt out talent. They will say, please choose YouTube as your established platform. Mm-hmm. They will say, invest in YouTube. Invest in YouTube as a brand. Invest in YouTube as your brand marketing. And in return for creating content, we will distribute your content within the world's largest online ad mechanism: Google Ads, YouTube Ads, whatever. You can make money off it. You sign contracts. The problem, though, is that the contract they have, it's like a fixed rate versus flexible rate mortgage. They keep changing the rules. And the problem is they change the rules to benefit themselves. They've demonetized people. They deplatform people. They will demonetize. Okay, they will demonetize a creator.
Well,
However,
yeah.
they will still have the video and they will still make money off ads. They just won't give the
The
money
money will
to the
go
creator.
to the person who has made the copyright claim, or of course, whatever. But I will say that I do have a personal bend on this because Computer America, we have a YouTube channel. Everyone should go check it out. But I got to say that when we try to, because we provide the video portion here and we use Twitch.tv, we use YouTube for a little while.
Mhm.
YouTube live streaming, and we actually had to not do that because we did a story about Spotify.
Mhm.
And just mentioning Spotify, we had their logo up. We were using a news story, and we gave all the accreditation that we could, and of course, we sourced them in the comments and things like that. We did what we thought was our due diligence, and we've been doing this for years and have not run afoul of anyone. Anyways, YouTube and their, of course, automation. I'm not going to say an individual had it out for us. An automated process gave us a copyright strike because Spotify claimed our video. And that would have been all well and good. We really don't care about, the ad served on that video. The bigger problem was one content strike, and you're not allowed to
Well,
stream on the platform live. Like, we could
let,
not do our daily show
let me
because
be a
they did
little
that.
more nefarious.
Hmm.
What if, like you say, Spotify claimed it, but was it claimed on behalf of Spotify? The reason being is because Spotify is a competitor to YouTube. They're competitors. And the idea is that you can take out mentions of competitors by eliminating them as a source. YouTube does that all the time. Google does that all the time. They get into these petty battles with each other. Amazon and YouTube fight each other. They both own platforms. They both own Amazon owns a Amazon owns Prime Video. They own
Hmm.
Amazon Music. They also have their own players. They have the Amazon Fire players. We've talked about this. Oh, I don't want YouTube on my platform. Remove YouTube. Oh, I don't want Amazon on my platform. Remove it. These companies are using their monopoly powers to discredit each other and create and sow market confusion in a way that someone like Spotify can't. And what I'm saying is that when you go to these platforms, you're not just going into, like, I'm not buying a printing press and printing on paper.
Hmm.
I'm going along with this preset goals that I should trust them. That's what contracts are for. That's what leases are for. It's to protect not just them, but to protect you. YouTube, Google, they change the rules whenever they want. You know the most egregious case I've ever heard of this? A
What's
couple
that?
years ago, Sony got hacked. Sony's online network was hacked very famously. Bank accounts were robbed. I know somebody whose entire life savings were destroyed. Here's the thing. They decide to change the rules after the game. They update their UEL where you cannot sue them if something gets hacked again, because they were sued into Kingdom Come. They had to pay
Hmm.
out millions. Here's the problem, though. You have a PlayStation?
No, but I know of
Okay.
them. Yes.
You have a play. Let's say you have a PlayStation 3 and you spent thousands of dollars buying digital content. Let's say they after you've purchased the content, which you can only play on the PlayStation 3 platform, they come out with an updated UEL that forbids you from suing them in case they become negligent. I don't agree with that. I want to keep my right to protect myself. If you decide you don't agree to that new UAL, you no longer have any access to the
But
content you
that's just it.
purchased.
No one ever disagrees because, hey,
Okay.
you are confronted with the end user license agreement because you want to use the product.
They are holding your content hostage.
Hmm.
Effectively, that's what's happening with YouTube. That's what happens with these services. They are saying invest, 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 invest. However, you're investing your life, you're investing your brand, you're investing your time, you're investing your money, you're investing their platform. In some cases, you're probably doing proprietary stuff. You're basically shouting out to YouTube, you're saying specific YouTube things. But if you, God help you, you say the wrong word, which could be the right word yesterday, and you're demonetized. Let me say something. If you were black and you went into a cafe and they said, "We don't serve your kind here," do your rights end at that door frame? No, they don't.
Right.
Why does the First Amendment stop working on a private platform? No other rights stop working. It doesn't happen. Rights don't stop.
Because the First Amendment doesn't, enshrine that you can say whatever you want, whenever you want, or wherever you want. It's enshrines that the government will not infringe on your
No, no,
ability
no.
to
You're
do so.
talking about speech. We're talking about protected speech, which of course includes contractual speech. If you have a legal right with a company like YouTube, if you go into this partnership, because you got to sign things to get on their network, you agree to things,
Hmm.
but they don't have to. So what's happening is that the speech that you're given is no longer protected by the First Amendment. Like your right for commerce, as a public company, you're engaging in a contract to let's just say create value. Computer America has value. Ben Crossman has value as a name. When they do this to you, when they demonetize, when they take you off, it's embarrassing to you. What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? It could theoretically jeopardize your livelihood because you didn't have the prescience to understand what's going to offend them tomorrow or what's going to be
So
illegal tomorrow. That's not right. It's
So
arbitrary.
in its entirety, though, we're talking about something that happens all the time, especially with tech, where legislatively speaking, and just talking about the law, it
It's
technology
ill-defined. It's ill-defined
it's
right now.
ill-defined and it advances much faster. One of the things that I was actually reading up, kind of Googling while I was listening to was this end user license agreement. Many of them are not legally binding, and I
Mm-mm.
actually recalled that we had a privacy expert here on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about where he went into the end user of like 70 or 80 different apps,
Mhm.
and they had conflicting language within their own end user license
Yes.
agreement. They were boilerplate. They didn't actually apply to anything that was involved within the company. Essentially, they have online forms that you go on, put in your company name,
Their own
put in what
people
you
don't even
do.
read the UALs.
Exactly. They're all
Exactly.
generated automatically, and they even contradict themselves.
Here's the
Um,
here's the here's the
yeah.
truth. In the old days, we had Carnegie. We had Rockefeller. Carnegie was a billionaire, and what did he do? He spent his billions making museums, making colleges, endowments. That's his legacy. He was able to control society by putting his name. It's the old Greek thing. I'm going to leave my legacy by becoming a statue or getting a star named after me. These tech companies, the vast majority of tech companies are ruled by a handful of people. And the problem is, yeah, you have the Facebooks, which Zuckerberg, you have Google, which I don't know who runs Google now. I think the guys they
Uh,
just stepped down. Not
the
not
gentleman who actually ran Google, but now he runs Alphabet. But yeah, yeah.
yeah, Alphabet, and Alphabet itself is being sort of dismantled. And then you have Microsoft. You have these companies. The one company you don't, I mean, in some cases Apple, but you have these companies that don't control technology. They control the information of technology, and almost to a T, they're activists or there would be activists, and they're behaving in ways that are justifying people's fear of the crazy billionaire, of the monopoly. Like, for example, when Microsoft
I thought
forced
you were going to say
Internet
Richard
Explorer,
Branson wanting to take people to space.
Branson, yeah, but Branson's different. It's a choice. Branson's cool. Branson doesn't tell me what food I should not be eating because it's not locally sourced chicken feed from some African safari. Okay, he's a guy who gets into a balloon and flies around naked. But what I'm saying is, when Microsoft, when Microsoft, when Microsoft made Internet Explorer mandatory, people lost their stuff over it. The same way they did AT&T. Like, oh, you're forcing us. You're forcing us. But what these tech companies are doing is egregious. And I don't want them to be broken up, but the way they treat their customers like cattle is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It is absolutely absurd. And you can blame part of this. You can't see me, but I'm waving my hand at the screen.
Hmm.
Is I will blame the Obama administration a little bit because he did allow his administration to be infiltrated by lobbyists from Google. He had in his administration people who worked from Google and Facebook and especially Amazon, and they were allowed essentially to write. He essentially gave them free reign to exonerate themselves from civil lawsuits, and
That happens
that would
in
have offered
every
protections.
that happens in every administration, and
I
I would even
understand.
and of course Google that, and trust me, tech companies being broken up. Talked about that before. You say you don't want to.
I
They're
got to be
more.
careful. Well, I got to be careful. Like, I don't agree with Prager's particular lawsuit because I don't want to establish that YouTube must play a video because there's some foul crap that does not need to be on YouTube.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, like, and I don't want some neo-Nazi or beheading videos, that are on Live Leak to be on YouTube. That doesn't belong there. But what I'm saying though is that there's a difference between seeing hardcore pornography on DVD and seeing hardcore pornography on Disney Plus, and so or on ABC. And so what I'm saying is that a company should be allowed to control content up to a degree, but it needs to be based on preset values, and it needs to be based on preset decisions of which somebody like me or you can go in there and say, well, this is the network for me. For example, if I'm going to make The Sopranos, I know that I can't make The Sopranos because Tony Soprano swears all to hell on Hallmark Channel. Can you imagine Sopranos on Hallmark? But no, it's on HBO and the F words fly. Even made a joke about it. You got to choose the network, and the network needs to reciprocate by offering a consistent
I've
product.
heard that same argument against Twitch. I've heard that same argument, of course, YouTube, like we're talking about. That happens all the time. Although I will say that what you said earlier does tie into a little bit what we're talking about here. And I've heard about this, that it's just the day. It's the age that we live in where people, and I would say people my generation, the infamous millennials, and of course your generation as well, that they want to make sure that the companies that they deal with on a day-to-day basis have shared values, or at least have some kind of values that they can identify. And
Well,
when that happens, hey, that's when you have companies, doing, making certain statements that it's like, great, I'm glad that you're for fair trade, but you make printer paper. Like, why does that matter? Like, companies benefit when they have a quote unquote moral compass that they can follow, even if that moral compass is just so that,
well,
hey, it's for a profit.
let me give you an example of what I was talking about. So when Obama was president, and there were close knit relationships with Amazon and Google, and there were clear violations where Google was clearly violating the law. I mean, they've been found guilty for this in Europe for even less reasons. I mean, there's clear cases they were a monopoly. And instead of taking action against them or investigating them, the investigations went nowhere. So then you had a company like Apple that refused to cooperate with the government to allow for intrusion in cell phones. You remember this. They didn't want to unblock. Next thing you know, Apple gets hit with the single largest antitrust violation since Microsoft, sued for billions. Amazon gets away. Google gets away. Apple gets brought to court again and again and again and again. Facebook is touted as the savior. Look at Facebook. They changed everything. Political parties flip. Now Facebook's being criticized. Now other companies are being criticized in ways for performing the exact same way. Nothing changes except for politics and inclusion of power. Apple is no longer being held accountable. Now Apple is showing up at the State of the Union. These companies are using this power to create inequities inside their own systems. And it does not benefit the consumer when the consumer is not being protected from these arbitrary activist rulers. I don't understand it. I don't understand. Let me give you an example.
Hmm.
Conspiracy is illegal. Did you know this? Conspiracy in business is illegal.
That sounds like a conspiracy.
That's what Apple was found guilty of with the iBooks scandal, for conspiracy, that they had conspired with companies to fix the pricing on iBooks. That's what they were found guilty of.
Hmm. I
Okay.
remember that.
You get a crazy guy like Alex Jones, who's nutty as a fruitcake. He's entertaining. I don't listen to him, but he's crazy. Every single major technical company bans him on the same day. Every single one. You can look it up.
I remember that.
What a coincidence that this particular person had been deplatformed, demonetized on the exact same day. You think, okay, you're banned on YouTube, you're banned on Twitch.
See,
but guess what happens?
I take that
Hold on.
as.
Well, let me finish
Yeah,
because it gets worse. Okay, it's one thing to say you violated YouTube's terms. Okay, but once you violated YouTube's terms, PayPal now says, well, we don't like you. You didn't violate anything, but we're now going to deplatform you. You haven't violated anything. You haven't even violated your own URL. We're going to deplatform you. We're going to when the Christchurch video hit in New Zealand.
Mhm.
Next thing you know, companies that weren't even involved in that, like one of the pervert chans, one of the 2chan, whatever chan. I don't watch the chans. Suddenly, they had DNS breakdowns where their web host providers would remove them. They had nothing to do. Do you know where that video was disseminated? Do you know where that guy's manifesto was actually shared? Facebook. How come Facebook wasn't taken down? Why was a Chan site taken down?
I think the very obvious answer is
Bigger.
there's a difference in size. Yeah.
But you see what I'm saying, though? These are inequities created by companies that have way too much power. How come GoDaddy can take down a Chan site because someone reposted a manifesto from Facebook? How come PayPal can demonetize a vendor that had nothing to do with these incidences because they don't like the publicity? They are creating inequities
I would
that
say
that
though that
supersede agreements.
that one of those sites that you mentioned, Facebook at least had someone go on and have a press release and say, we will delete this wherever it's found on the site. Like, we will delete this content. Whereas one of the websites that you mentioned, they said, we are a bastion of free speech. We do not, stop any kind of discussion. We will report them to the authorities, but
Okay,
we will not delete
but
anything. I think that was the difference.
but the video was created on Facebook using Facebook
Of
technology.
course,
It was,
of course.
and did you hear about this case a couple of weeks ago with this crazy guy who tried to run over a voter registration booth, and he was live streaming it on Facebook. He was arrested.
I don't
Right?
remember
Yeah,
hearing about that one.
exactly. This guy was using Facebook Live to live stream this. Do you see this? There have been hundreds and hundreds of people being murdered, killed, sexually oppressed, all this on Facebook Live. Facebook Live is the single largest progenitor of hate speech created videos. People use Facebook Live to
Well, that's because
create
it's the
this
biggest, though.
content.
It's the most easily accessible. Everyone has a Facebook account, only
Okay,
3 billion
I
people,
don't,
and
but
anyone
what
can
I'm
pick up a
saying
phone
is
and do that.
there's a man in New Zealand who was arrested and going to jail because he shared a video on Facebook Live. He didn't make the video, he just shared it. So what I'm saying is, why does Facebook, how come people get banned on Facebook? How come other companies get demonetized? Companies that are not big. Like I said, I don't like the Chans, but just by sharing content that they didn't even create or even linking to it or mentioning it, they get taken down.
You can get arrested in the United States for sharing content that is considered obscene, and there's a whole list of them. I'm not going to go into it, but it's certain categories of pornography and things that are morally objectionable, I guess,
Of course.
back. And
But you
you can get thrown in jail for that, even in America. It doesn't have to be a particular high, kind of high. Uh, it's not. I'm sorry. It does not
you
have to
can
be a
there
particularly
are
high profile video. It could be anything within these categories, and if someone finds you, tracks you down, they can arrest you for that.
the video itself was not illegal when it was made. The video itself was not illegal when it was aired. These are rules that are being applied retroactively. We're not talking about child pornography. We're talking about videos that were created on a platform, but Facebook as a platform is never held to the same standard that a website like Chan is. They're never being demonetized. Their financial institutions are not being revoked. Their DSN licenses are not being taken down. They get away with it. The companies that they don't like, they use opportunities to deplatform people post hoc that had nothing to do with this content. And this is the problem. This is the problem when these companies have too much unchecked power. And the problem with the Prager thing, didn't mean to get off on a tangent. The problem with the Prager thing is that conceptually he's correct. The way he went around it was wrong. He should not have the right to post whatever he wants, and YouTube has to take it. But by all accounts, his content did not violate any of their rules. It was demonetized. There's been thousands of cases like this. And I'm not going to make this argument because I'm not going to get political. But I think if you were to line up all the people that have been demonetized and deplatformed and censored for political reasons or speech, I think a lot of them would fit in one category and very few would fit in another. And that's a problem. I used to be called a First Amendment absolutist. I
Hmm.
used to believe you should say whatever you want, and I still do. But saying what you want doesn't mean you cannot be held accountable for what you say.
Of
But
course.
when I say held accountable, just because I express my opinion, that should offer some protections from the heating company shutting off my heat. It should offer me some protections from the water company not turning off my water. In England, the what is it? The
National Health
NHS.
Services. Yeah.
They are now contemplating allowing doctors and nurses to refuse service to people that they deem racist or bigoted or homophobic based on social media. That's the next step. That's the next step. Unchecked power allows you to dehumanize people. First, it's YouTube. Next thing you know, it's Facebook. We're going to take away your PayPal. And next thing you know, we're going to take away your healthcare. That's a reality. I wish I had a tinfoil hat, but I'm not, because this is what happens when a generation of power-mad, monopolistic, dictatorial idiots have too much power. And in this country, in Britain, they don't have the First Amendment. They don't have freedom of speech. They don't have it. They don't even have a constitution. We do in the United States. And that is to protect, and the ACLU used to do this. The ACLU would, if the ACLU was mattered, they would be protecting people like PragerU. They would find a legal argument to make this work, because it is important that not necessarily that his speech is protected, but his right for consistency is protected.
I actually like the ACLU, and I think on that note, Nathan, there's music playing in the background, and yeah, we got on such a tangent there, but honestly, quite honestly, I don't agree with what you just said, but I do like conversations and how they flow, and that was a lot of fun. It really was. So Nathan, we didn't talk about really much, if anything, that would be posted on Popzara, but if people go to popzara.com, what would they find?
They'll find a new feature that I just started today. So we replaced our old NPD stories with a new feature, a new article, maybe the future, about gaming, actually, which I don't really talk about. It's called The State of Gaming. Check it out. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, don't let me know. We actually covered a lot of stuff we did. So I apologize. I'm still kind of preloaded from what I talked about yesterday, which is why I'm so knowledgeable. And so my facts just came to me so naturally.
I gotcha. So everyone check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes. In the meantime, Nathan Evans, thank you so much. Everyone out there, we're done for the weekend. We'll be back Monday, bright and early, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. And hey, we'll catch you next time. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.